Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Viewers, as you know, a lot is happening internationally, primarily when it comes to President Donald Trump, who has gone totally, I would say, to an extent ballistic when it comes to friends, foes, prospective partners, and existing partners in terms of tariff imposing. And particularly, hit has been China in terms of, I think, the last we heard, 145% tariffs he has declared. China is also not bowing down. So, how does it affect US China relations? How does it affect India's relationship with China, given that China is our immediate neighbor? What happens in terms of global trade and all? To discuss all this and more, I have Professor B.R. Deepak with me. He's a professor in Chinese studies in the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Now, he specializes in China's relations with major powers, including India, of course. He's also the author of several books, including books he has translated from Chinese. His latest book, in fact, he's just released two books, are called Rising India and China Strategic Rivalry in the Himalayas and the Indo-Pacific, and two volumes of it. Professor Deepak, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joyeeta. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Professor Deepak, first question is that what exactly is the nature of US China trade relations which has actually made Trump take such big steps and declare such huge tariffs on China?
I
What
think
is the trigger that.
I think trade as such, I would say, it should not have been a major issue. Why? Because it has been that way ever since you can say American dominance globally. Not only with China, it has been with various other countries. For example, if we talk about specific trade data, uh, China and United States, they are having a trade volume of over 560 billion US dollars. But problem is that United States is having major deficit. It is around 361 billion US dollars. That means United States, they import much more than what it export to China. It exports only to the tune of 144, 45 billion US dollars. And as a result, there's a huge trade deficit. This is one of the starting point for it. But I think this is not really the problem. Problem is the structure of the trade and the kind of relationship this trade you can say has troubled, especially United States. For example, there are various scholars who have conducted studies, and in fact, some of the enterprises. In fact, I have quoted this in my latest, comment in Sunday Guardian. Bridgewater founder Ray Dalio. So he has, I think, nicely put it forth, and he says there are three reasons for that. So first reason is the crumbling of the monetary or economic global order led by United States. That is a major issue there. And of course, this is also related to sort of like the borrower and you can say, consumer relationship between United States, whereas China is the borrower. It is the lender primarily. It lends. United States is the borrower, and on top of that, China also exports, a whole lot of goods to United States. So this is creating problem in United States. For example, the bonds, Treasury bond, United States sells. Mostly they have been bought over by the China.
Yeah.
And United States pay interest on that. And if it would like to sell further more bonds, perhaps China will buy more. Or if China sells these bonds, so that also creates a lot of problem for United States. Second, Ray Dalio says that it is the political journey which is going on in United States. You see a lot of polarization is there, and then various voices in for and against. And the third is the geopolitical connotation of it. So these three things, I think it has led to the kind of policies, especially the trade policies and the tariff policies Trump has initiated, and it believes that China is the main culprit, behind all these things, because it is not only the bilateral trade between United States and China, it also other trade which comes into United States from the peripheral states. For example, it comes from Canada, it comes from Mexico, and it also comes from whole lot of say Southeast Asian country. Vietnam is one example. For example, Vietnam's trade deficit with China, it is almost same as what United States exports to China, around 45 billion US dollars. But if you see the trade surplus Vietnam is having with the United States, so it is almost the same quantity. So therefore, I think the trade which is routing through all these countries into United States, that Trump believes that it also the making of China, because in the aftermath of his first tariffs in 2017 on China, many of China's, you can say, subsidiaries or enterprises, so they have relocated to these countries, including Mexico, even in Hungary, including Vietnam. And then these countries, so they are rerouting the Chinese products to United States. If you account these things together, I think the deficit, which we are talking about 361 billion US dollar, it becomes much, much larger. Therefore, Trump believes that it has to be fixed. It cannot be, taken the way it is. So that is one reason. I think another, as I said, that it is the crumbling of the United States global economic order. Because if we see by 2012, America was the largest producer of the manufacturing goods in the world. In fact, it produced, especially in the 70s and 80s, it was the manufacturing hub of the world. It had almost 30% of global output in manufacturing. That is massive, which is the output of China in 2024, around 31.6% of the global output. Now, by 2012, if you see the structure of these two countries with the global community, it has been thrown topsy-turvy. Now, China is the largest trade partner of 150 countries globally, whereas US has been reduced at the second position. And if you see the map, it would be totally red. The entire globe would be red. And only a few dots would be here and there. That is United States. So therefore, America believes that when it was the giant in manufacturing, the giant in services, that era is gone. And the free riding, which other countries, so they have been doing so far, Trump believes that it need to be halted, it need to be put a stop. And that is why these tariffs, not only on China, though he has singled out China, but he has not spared his allies also.
Yeah, to an extent, many of the allies and partners are also collateral damage. Vietnam is perhaps collateral damage, and other countries as well. Well, I don't know so much about India, why he did this to India in such a bad way. The thing is that now you see, when we are looking at something like this, will it be possible for him to reverse this situation and to take back to what you are talking about, say 2012, when US had that kind of hold on world trade, and not China, 31%, and trade with 150 countries? Is it possible for even Donald Trump to break that monopoly now which China has on global trade and manufacturing?
He says that he will do it, but I think it
How?
is extremely impossible. It is extremely difficult, near to impossible. Why? Because at this point in time, as we were discussing, China produces 31.6% of the global manufacturing. it is the hub at this point in time. So that is one thing. And the second thing is, I think
And we are not
China
even
has,
taking into account its subsidiaries or vassal states, where
right,
once you add that, that must be huge.
right, it's huge. I don't have the exact figures for that, but and then of course, the kind of manufacturing China is doing all over the world, it is massive. It is massive. It has shifted its supply chain. You can see the kind of trade it is having. It is having trade surplus of over 1 trillion US dollars, whereas United States is having a trade deficit of 1.2 trillion US dollars annually. That is massive, and that is how the kind of borrowing United States has done, and incurred almost 37, 38 trillions of debt. So that is massive. So this is this that Trump believes that by way of tariffs or by way of various other things he's doing, he would be able to do it. But I think it is extremely impossible. If you see the first trade war with China in 2017, China's trade, you can say US's trade deficit with China between 2018, it was in 2018 itself, it was around 322 billion US dollars. Now, which after a period of, you can say, 6 years, it has risen to 361 billion US dollars. So that means it is increasing, right? So it is not decreasing. But if you see the entire volume of trade deficit, which I mentioned right now, 1.2 trillion US dollars, so which is 50% of its deficit in 2017. So therefore, China believes that these tariffs, so they have not helped United States of America. Rather, so it has hurt United States of America, and the figures, if we believe it, I think they go the China way. So that is one thing. And another thing which China says, rather in defense of its stand, it says that in 2024, if we take into account the services which United States has benefited in China from, so they are massive. In 2024 alone, China said that US had surplus in service trade to the tune of 26 billion US dollars, and China was in deficit. And another argument which China gives is that if you take into account all the enterprises which are doing business in China, American enterprise, especially in the service and finance, so they have generated 491 billion US dollars in revenues. And whereas the Chinese enterprises in the United States, in the same year, they generated only 78 billion US dollars of revenue. So China argues that if you account service trade, so then China is in deficit, but it squares the trade in goods, which we said that it is around 360 billion US dollar deficit for United States. So that is China's argument. And if we see these arguments, and this, by the way, has been spelled out in the white paper which China brought out on April 9th also, in defense of its trade policies, in defense of its, you can say, standpoint vis-a-vis United States.
So, do you think China is confident of wearing out Donald Trump and weathering the so-called tariff storm that is kind of brewing or is ongoing right now? And China is talking about asking Donald Trump to withdraw it. So, it's somewhere China also is wary about hurting, isn't it?
Of course, yes, it hurts. As I said, that one is the bilateral trade, another is trade through other countries,
Yes.
Third parties. So which is massive for China. That is why, the trade surplus of 1 trillion US dollars. Otherwise, China would not have such a huge surplus. But having said that, China believes that ever since Trump imposed first round of these tariffs in 2017, so Chinese, they're prepared for this, and they believe that Trump would not be able to do it for a longish period in time, because it will hurt United States economy, especially it will hurt the consumers in United States, and the kind of inflation it will cause. America being a democracy, there would be so many voices. As such, there is too much polarization in the United States. And as argued by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, in United States, only 10% of the people, the population, they hold 88% of the stock value, and rest around 50%. So they are in debt. United States, 50% population, it is in debt. And it is, I think, these people, they will create a huge hue and cry if this trade war goes on forever. So that is one thing. And another thing, I think people within Trump administration, including Elon Musk, and including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, I think they are also not in favor of having these kind of tariffs. And finally, China is a different society. It is, you can say, under one-party rule, and they can sustain it forever. And that is why we see that, spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so they are playing so many propaganda videos, including Mao's video. And when Mao is saying during the Korean War in 1953, and it is addressed to the United States presidents, whether Truman or Eisenhower, so on and so forth, said that it depends on these people. Doesn't matter how long you want to fight, we will fight it until the final victory. So that is the kind of approach China has taken during this point in time. And China, I think they know that in short term, Trump may be able to, inflict some of the injuries on China, but in medium term and long term, definitely not. It will bring more harms to United States rather than China.
Yeah, but the problem, I think, when compounded with the economic trouble that China is going through, is it a more posturing than actual hope? Than actual, or is this posturing based on substance? Because China is undergoing lots of economic turmoil.
Oh, yes, there is no doubt about it. In fact, Ray Dalio's these three propositions, right? Monetary, economic troubles for United States and the global community, political problems, and geopolitics, of these tariffs. So these equally applies to China, right? China's own economy is not doing great, I would say. So though they have projected 5% growth, for the next financial year, but if you see, the kind of industries, which used to be at the forefront of China's so-called, economic performance or prosperity. So that has crumbled down. For example, investment, it is not the same as it used to be. The real estate, which used to be the pillar of China's economic growth, it is totally collapsed. And the kind of debt China has also incurred, it is also massive. And these were reported by the state media, and some of the spokesperson from the Chinese government. They said if everything is accounted for, it is almost, you can say, more than maybe perhaps 3 trillion of debts, and if you account for local governments, comes more than that. It's 9 trillion US dollars. So it is massive. So China is facing economic problems. But again, I think it knows that in short term, it would be able to sustain that kind of pressure. But perhaps in long term, neither United States nor China, so they would endure this kind of, for example, 125% tariffs from China and 145 tariffs from United States. It means that it is sort of like decoupling.
Yeah.
Nothing is being traded between two at this point in time, right? Though Trump has already gestured that mobile phones and telecommunications and electronics, so they would be again traded. They would having a buffer of 90 days again. But China remains hopeful that perhaps in the midterm they would be able to strike a deal, and they are prepared for it. In fact, and I think so is Trump, especially when next year there would be midterm in the United States, and if this kind of trade war, tariff war, it goes on, perhaps American public they'll have a lot more resentment than what is at present.
Yeah, now when we are looking at it in terms of geopolitical implications, uh, what exactly does it mean for the world? Specifically, at a time when China is kind of trying to influence a lot of countries, including India, the global south in particular, and it is already, when it comes to geopolitical military terms, it is trying to uh, you know extend its influence to a lot of countries, including to, say, for example, the countries that are south of the US. Look at what happened with the Hutchison port, which the US wanted, which Trump wanted the US to buy, but China did not let that go. So what are the implications of this?
Now, of course, one, there is going to be a lot of churning and maybe turning the tables. A lot of imbalances would be there. So that is for sure. You see, already we are witnessing in the initial rounds of this tariff war almost 10 trillions of dollars. So they were eroded from the global markets. So that is one of the implications. And I think the second, in terms of you were saying this
Geostrategic.
Yeah, so geostrategic implications of it. So this is again, I think, the kind of American order, which we have seen globally. So that again, I think is not sustainable. And in fact, even United States allies, so they are also doubting America's intentions. Though I think American intention is that they're allies, so they should be responsible for their own security. It should not be America in Europe, covering for Europe's security. In South Asia or in Northeast Asia, perhaps, so they would like to strengthen coalition with Japan.
Would you say China is banking on the hope or the belief that the global south in particular, and they will see China as a more stable point, stable, if in a multipolar world we are talking about, it's a more stable pole than the US. So automatically that gives China an upper hand in a direct China US competition to who will control which pole of the world. Do you think that is what China believes, that people will see it as a more benign, more moderate, more considerate than this wild president who is going around throwing tariffs hurling tariffs at everybody?
Now, of course, China has posed itself as one of the, you can say, more responsible stakeholder in the global system. That is one thing. And I think another thing is China is confident that, the kind of trade it is having with you can say, global south. So that is also one of China's, you can say, strategic thinking, that people, they would be supporting China, and China has, you can say, posed itself as another choice. That choice was not there, before world community. But now China, even during this tariff war, it has posed itself as, the other, you can say, country beside United States for people to choose. And of course, China wanted these countries, not only in the global south, but in the global north, to bandwagon with China. But to everyone's surprise, or as it was expected, they didn't bandwagon with China. Japan didn't, even Vietnam didn't, even European Union, they didn't, right? Though European Union presidents, so they had a telephonic conversation with Chinese Premier Li Qiang. But then I think it was just a gesture. So ultimately, I think the allies and partner of the United States, so they both tried to negotiate a deal with the United States, and as such, United States, so they have already said that there are 75 countries who are negotiating deals with China in this intervening period of 90 days. I think beside this, China knows that it doesn't have the kind of capabilities the United States has to police the entire world in, because the kind of system or the global architecture or geopolitics, it was there, it benefited immensely China. And China would like to sustain this system, whether it is the UN, whether it's the WTO, whether it's various other organizations. It was on the basis of these that China came up to the place which is today. Therefore, I don't think it would like to
Rock the boat.
rock the boat at this point in time. It will still like to sail with the wind the way it is. But then, of course, when it comes to confrontation, it would also like to confront. And President Xi Jinping's visit to Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, I think that is a pointer to this, that they would like to stabilize the geopolitics. They don't want to rock the boat. And this is also manifested in the meetings Xi Jinping presided on 8th and 9th of April. It was primarily focused on China and the neighboring countries. So again, giving signal that so we are there. You need to be not to worry about much. And if United States is rocking the boat, China is going to stabilize it.
Yeah, but in this context, let's talk about India and, of course, the Quad, because you see, I'm being told that even Japan is willing to strike a deal with China, even South Korea. And what about India in this context? Because China is making very packetary noises. Can China be trusted? And are we kind of towards making up? We have had very bad relations with China ever since Galwan, ever since 2020. Are we in the process of making up with China? Because the China threat, has it kind of come down for us?
I think there is a huge gap between the trust deficit between United States and India and China. So this gap
But
has
is it
widened.
comparable?
No, it's not comparable. There is no comparison. I mean, that is why India is in a hurry to negotiate a deal with the United States, not in a
Yes.
hurry to negotiate a deal with
China.
with China, right? So this is the point. And I think the crux of this is trust deficit. And especially at a time when China believes that propping up India's manufacturing capability will pose a challenge to its own national security in the long run. And that is how the Chinese, you can say, academia and also, some of the strategic thinkers and think tanks, so they are advancing the argument. In fact, some of their very, tall intellectuals, so they are towing this line that, no, we should not be, helping India in propping up its manufacturing. The way United States and Europe, so they propped up Chinese manufacturing, and today it became the kind of monster which United States and European Union, so they are dealing with it. Entire world, right?
So they're actually working against India.
So I think they also don't want to antagonize India, especially in the current scenario. So when they are facing a lot of heat from United States, so they would like to take all the people along with them, and wanting to stabilize into the relationship, perhaps restore some of the trust. But then again, you see, we still do not have direct flights. We don't have Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, even though it had been emphasized and re-emphasized ever since Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping, they met in Kazan
Kazan, huh?
on 23rd of October last year, right?
Russia.
In Russia. So therefore, I think for India and China to normalize this relationship, political as well as trade relationship. Trade, of course, it is going on. So we are having almost 136, 37 billions of trade volume between us, and a massive deficit for us, over 100 billion US dollars.
Because normalization would also mean dumping by the Chinese, isn't it?
Naturally, so China would like to see, where it can put the things which are lying in the warehouses and which are lying at the ports, so on and so forth, And India would be a favorite destination, and Southeast Asian countries, so they would also be favorite destinations, for Chinese goods. But I think given the posturing of both the countries, the one I stated from Chinese side, and also, if I may quote our Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, I think it becomes pretty clear that both will have to travel a long distance before they normalize their political trade and other relations.
So the Chinese embassy may be tweeting a lot of things, but we are not budging, and they definitely do not have any intention to be actually quote unquote India's friends.
I mean, ultimately, we have to normalize the relations, right? So that is a good starting point, that we have to normalize the relations. We have to disengage from the border. We have to de-escalate the tensions. So there is no doubt about it, right? But I think in order to move into that direction, perhaps both need to think about these low-hanging fruits, and then try to reach some sort of agreement, rather than reaching a trade deal or other deal. I think that is a distant dream, and especially in India's context, when we already have such a huge trade deficit. Will Chinese invest in India, so the way they have invested in Southeast Asia? I remain skeptical, of that. I'm apprehensive that I think that window of opportunity is gone. It perhaps was there long back, but then it is no more there. So therefore, we have to manage this relationship the way we have been managing our border with China, and not let a dispute come into become conflicts. I think that is the maximum we would perhaps so try to do with China.
And how does it affect Quad? Because this is where India is also there, US is also there. Do you think, is there any possibility of militarizing the Quad at any point of time? Given that, okay, in spite of all the noises that are being made by both sides, China and India, we are it's actually, the relationship is not positive, as you mentioned. It's quite hostile at one level, perhaps. So do you think what comes into play over there, and with US, whatever, is there a possibility of militarization of this particular body, I mean particular platform, when it's seen in the context of Indo-Pacific, where the US also wants control, and so does China?
No, I think India from the very beginning has been against securitization of the Quad. Let it be very clear. I think right from 2018, remember when Prime Minister Modi delivered a keynote during Shangri-La. dialogue. And he said that we wish to make this inclusive. But of course, China didn't take it that way. Though China appreciated Prime Minister Modi's these statements at that point in time. But largely, I think China viewed Quad, whether you securitize it or do not securitize it, as an instrument of America's containment of China policy, and sees India as part of that containment strategy. So that is very clear, right? Whether we securitize, whether we militarize, whether four nations they convert it into a mini NATO, so on and so forth. But China will continue to view it as a containment of China's strategy, by United States and its willing partners, right? Like India is one of them, Japan, and maybe there would be Quad plus, so on and so forth. But given the present context, perhaps India too, and Japan too, and Australia too. I mean, Australia is the United States is having trade surplus with Australia, but still it is imposing tariff on Australia. So I think some of the tariffs, so they are difficult to comprehend. So why he has imposed tariffs left, right, center, everywhere. So this is problematic. So therefore, I think given the present context, perhaps there would be a little dilution of the Quad, given the existing circumstances. But it remains to be seen how quickly, United States get over this tariff war. And if it continues, then it would be difficult for its allies and partners to behave in the similar fashion, so the way they behaved at one point in time. And I think same is true for Quad.
In this context, a quick question on Taiwan. What are the chances of China actually trying to grab Taiwan now? And will that is there a possibility of that resulting in some kind of a kinetic conflict between the US and China, which kind of drags everyone else into it?
I mean, it's a difficult question to answer at this point in time, right? And of course, Taiwan is under continuous pressure. The kind of military exercises China is holding around Taiwan and circling Taiwan. There are fighter jets and ships. They are increasing in numbers. By the way, China has become one of the largest shipbuilder of the world. If you see the tonnage, it has order of almost 22 million tons all over the world. So United States used to be one big power, but now everything is being outsourced to China. Therefore, China has this advantage. And I think if you see the kind of military capability China has enhanced, or you can say the kind of technological and military gap it had with the United States, it has largely bridged that gap. So if you the sixth generation stealth fighter, so China has demonstrated it, and the United States, of course, they said that we have been trying it for the last 5 years, but I don't think it is it is anywhere near to operationalize these fighter jets. So therefore, on the one hand, we would see United States continuously propping up, asking Taiwan to increase its defense spending. But Taiwan, as a small island of 23 million people, after all, has its limitations. And I don't think the kind of defense it requires to match the Chinese. It would be impossible for any country, right? So China is spending almost 550 billion US dollars on its defense now, and Taiwan is just peanuts. So therefore, even if United States prop up Taiwan's defense industries, acumen's platform, but I don't think it would be enough to match Chinese capabilities. So Chinese, of course, so they have raised the pitch, I would say, recently, including if you see their international airports, Beijing international airports. In fact, there are slogans, that we must take back Taiwan. It is unprecedented. It was not there before. So some speculations are there that so China may take this adventurous step, but as an expert, I think I don't see that coming, at least in near future.
Last question. Does China believe that from a multipolar world, it is going to be a unipolar world where China is the dominant force? Does China believe that it is going to win the war, and will it actually win the war? In
War,
every way, in trade, we talk about trade, geopolitics, geostrategy, influence. I mean, anyway, China is conducting a political warfare with almost every country. Do you think that China actually will be able to transform the world into a unipolar world the way the US had made the world into for some time at least?
I would say no, because as I've said that, so China has offered a choice that it is one of the serious players, but I think it's not there as yet.
But does it believe it will be there?
Of course, I think it believes the way they have earmarked or planned for 2020, 2035, how much global output their industry would produce by that time, and what kind of army that they should be having by that point in time, and then 2049. I think that is their goal. That by the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China,
2049, that is
1949. So they should be the global power. Though they say that they should be reaching the level of the medium level developed countries, but I think the real goal is to be the power by that time. But then again, the kind of uncertainties there are, the kind of economic problems, political problems that China will face, in the future. So that may rock the boat again. So we have to wait and watch it.
So that is what Donald Trump is fighting against, and hoping perhaps also that he will be able to hobble China enough so that it does not become that the world does not become unipolar by 2049. Thank you, Professor Deepak, for being on the show. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.